How you doing? This is James Harper with the Killeen Daily Herald. I have with me Kirby. He is running for the seat 5 of the Cove Council. How you doing today, sir?
Doing well, thank you.
Excellent. Well, we're going to start right off. I'm going to have you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running.
Well, I'm a lifelong resident of Coppers Cove. I've been in almost every committee you can possibly think of. I've always been involved in city government, or at least working with the people somehow through coaching, that type of thing. I've been on city council for 6 years, served as mayor pro tem for 1 year, have a bachelor's degree, and been there, done all of this stuff, and I want to get involved. 20 years ago, when I was on city council, we set together a 25-year plan that is actually just now starting to come to fruition in a lot of areas. So I'd love to be a part of the council so I could kind of see that through and maybe begin to help plant seed for future growth.
Excellent. So what makes you the best candidate?
I guess because of my experience and because of my love for the city of Coppers Cove. I grew up there, and a lot of people think that that's a problem, but that's only if you're if your glass is half empty, well, you're going to think everything's negative. But when you grow up there, you're not going anywhere. I have no intention. If I retire, I stay right where I'm at. I'm not going to Florida. And so whatever laws or rules or things we do now is going to affect me 30 years from now. My children live here, so it's going to affect them. And so I think that makes me a viable candidate. I know a lot of the history of Coppers Cove, Killeen area, Fort Hood, etc. Know a lot of the several of the congressmen and senators, and I've been to dinner and lunch with several of them, met with them in different situations. So I kind of know how to handle myself around them, and I know what they like and what they don't like, and that can't do anything except help advance the city of Cove.
Right now, there's a petition going around for the, I guess you'd say, the legalization of liquor sales in Cove. Yes. Where do you stand on that?
Well, that's a real, rock hard space thing, and the conundrum is we really don't have very many facts. I know what the papers have been saying. I know what the people are saying. They're saying, they're talking revenue, but they're giving revenue promises of other cities. Killeen's 130,000 people. We're 32,000 people. So they're saying Killeen's making $111,000 and Cove is only making $13,700 a year on the beer and tax we've got. And what they're hoping is somehow that will triple when we have the legal sale of alcohol. Now, I'm not against the liquor issue. I'm not for it. I'm not against it at this point. I think that there needs to be, not everything's about revenue to me. Sometimes it's a social issue, and we have to figure out the impact of the social value of this thing versus another $15,000 a year. $15,000 a year, if that's all we do is double what we have, that wouldn't even buy a half-time employee. So is it worth that little of a money? Now, I'm all for, I believe it was Twin Liquors or Specs has already been contacted by our EDC, and they're committing. They would like to come to Coppers Cove, and I would love to see them come so that we could keep our tax dollars there. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to vote this thing in just strictly for $13,000. If there's a future growth, a lot of people are saying that the bigger restaurants won't come in because we don't sell alcohol. That's not true. We've been in contact with a lot of these bigger Outback and Red Lobster type people. Mm-hmm. They're not coming because of the liquor issue. They're not even concerned about that because they can file for a private club, right, and they can get it. So they would rather not do that because it is difficult and it's laborious for them. But that's not what's stopping them. What's stopping them is the growth in Cove. We're stymied. 32,000 people, you get a certain amount of vendors and restaurants. When you have 100,000 population, you get bigger restaurants, right, because you can sustain them on a regular basis for the years. And that's what we've been told. As recently, our EDC about 4 weeks ago was in Vegas talking to some of the bigger restaurants. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what they said. You don't have a population base that can support us on a regular basis. Used to be we could draw from Fort Hood, but with the drawdown of military here, Cove is losing some of that. So several of them are wanting to come, but they're on a holding pattern right now. Again, let me be clear. I'm not really against the alcohol issue. 20 years ago, everybody thought the world was going to come to an end when we sold beer and wine, but nothing really changed. So it's not going to be the end of the world, and what will as far as the human part of it, the social part of it, right now we've got people driving to clean Harker Heights, buying it, and they're drinking it on the way home. Well, that's not good for our citizens or anybody else.
Right.
And then the tax money stays here, whether it's big or small, it stays here. I would rather us have like a Twin Liquor or something, a package store, a couple, you know, whatever, there in Cove, so people could buy it and take it home to drink it. If that's what they want to do, you know, they're not hurting anything in my mind.
Yeah, it's a very deep subject, and everybody has a pretty hard position on it, and it's a tough.
There's
one.
got to be a marrying together. Everybody's either black or white on this
And
issue.
it can't be.
And there's got to be a merging here, because we've got to do what's best for Copper's Cove, not what's best for a particular group or this particular group. What's going to be best for everybody in the city, not just now, but 30, 40 years from now.
Right. Yeah.
The chicken thing.
I know it's and I don't mean.
It is, and you know, let me start right off. I'm all for chickens. I have chickens. I've always had chickens. You know, for the last 25, 30 years in some form or fashion, and I've got, I think, 6 or 7 now, but they're not in the city. I've got some land outside, but I don't have a problem with people having chickens in their backyard. So long as it's not a rooster or a guinea or a peacock, they get real loud. Not as bad as a barking dog, but they still get loud. So I'm not against the chicken issue at all. I'm all for it. One of my problems is I don't like big government, and I think government is coming in, even in small sections, you know, like city council and all the way up to Washington. They're taking away our rights, and I think somewhere along the line we need to have our individual rights, and we should have the right to have a chicken if we want one, so long as it's not causing a problem with other people. The cities want to regulate. They want shots. They want inoculations. They want a license for a chicken. I think we can go overboard on this thing. Let the people have some chickens, so long as they're not causing some problems, you know.
I've seen several houses that have ducks. You know, they just have a little pool and 5 ducks in the backyard. We actually had ducks ourselves.
And the eggs are great.
Right. I personally see no big issue there, but there are people who do, and you know, because they do, they must be heard. It's the way we are, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, well, I'm not for somebody having a cow in their backyard.
No, of course not.
You know,
there's limits to everything.
A chicken's not going to hurt anything. I think there should be some regulation. As hard as it is for me to say that word, there really does have to be some regulation.
Or else you'll have somebody with 17 goats.
Right.
And they will.
In the house. Well, anybody that gets on council, and I think anybody that runs for city council, if they promise they will do something, they don't know what they're doing, because you're only 1 vote of 7, and so it takes 2/3 of the. You got to have at least 4 people on your side, but there comes some maneuvering and you know, some talking or whatever. I forgot the first part. Oh, the budget, I think, is the biggest thing facing the city of Copper's Cove right now. We're $4.5 million. Down, and so they had to make some drastic cuts 2 weeks ago, and I don't like the cuts, but I understand the cuts. And the police department and the fire department in any city you go to, they're going to be the highest budgeted items. So if we cut 5%, they always get hit harder than, say, the street department, and so they got hit pretty hard this time. $500,000 for one, $400,000 for the other. And the police department and the fire department said they won't be cutting any service or cutting overtime. Well, that is service. So I have a hard time with those cuts, but we got to do something. And what I believe happened is that, you know, most cities operate off of, they've got a budget and then they've got a projected budget. Well, I think we've been operating off the projected budget for the last 10 years or so. We've had pretty good projected budgets, you know, the government giving us money and handouts and whatever, and then all of a sudden the sequestry happened, job cuts, job loss, all of that revenue we were getting just stopped. Our school district is hurting because of it, and so now our city is $4.5 million overdrawn because of the projection. And so I think that, 20 years ago we had this close to the same problem, and we finally just drew a line on the chalkboard and said, this is what our budget is now. We're not spending anything over it. We'll look at the projected, but we're not going to spend the projected. We're going to spend the budget. That's it. We have $32 million budget in Copperas Cove. We should never go over that. Now, if the projected comes in $4 or $5 million, then spend it. Find something. But let's live within our budget. One of the biggest problems Americans have, and I love Americans, but we got a spending problem. We think we can put it on credit card and just go. So we spend $100 a month more than what we bring in, and somehow we think it's going to be okay. Eventually it'll catch up with you, and I think that's what's happened. And I think our council is doing a pretty good job right now. They found a mistake, they're cutting it, they've corrected the mistake, and I don't think it'll happen again. But I can almost promise if I'm on there, I'm going to squawk like a chicken if they try and go over that budget.
As long as it's not a cow.
As long as it's not a cow.
Right. That's all I have. I really appreciate you coming in and spending some time with me.
All right.
Thank you.
Everybody out there, if you haven't voted by now, vote for me. Thank you.